My name is Michael Logan. I work with Archways. Archways is an organization that was set up to implement an evidence-based program called The Incredible Years, and it implements various evidence-based programs. And the program I'm going to talk about that I've set up is a program called Mentoring for Achievement Program, or more commonly known as MAP. The reason why MAP was chosen, the Mentoring for Achievement program was chosen, was, first of all, it was an evidence-based program. So it was chosen from a conference in the States, and where our directors went over to find programs that would meet identified needs, local needs from here in Dublin. And one of the needs was to deal with children who were at risk of school failure, dropping out of school early. And so this program is a program that was used from 30 years back. It has a 30-year history with evidence in it, evidence-based history, dealing with children, first of all, dealing with drug addiction. Then it was adapted for secondary schools, so dealing with children who are at risk of dropping out of school. And it was shown to be very effective. Well, we wanted a program that was going to be effective, of course, that we had some kind of sense that this actually works, because there's a lot of programs in schools that aim to deal with that, but there's little evidence-based work done up to date, actually, at least at that point. This was 5 years ago we started it. So the idea was to have a program where we had a sense, starting out with it, that this is likely to work. And we wanted a program that was going to be easy enough to operate, so a program that schools would take on, because schools are assaulted with programs. There's loads of different programs going into schools. And so it was to find a program that would fit in well into schools and would function well in schools, and they could take it on and just operate it as a program that they use to deal with children who are at risk. The decision to use this program, it started, of course, at the conference in the States, and then back in Dublin, our directors, we had a meeting and we had a discussion around the staff meeting about this program. And because of my background is in education, so I was seen as somebody who potentially could work it. So it was presented as a program I could see straight away that it was something that I have a lot of experience with, and it fitted very, very well into my experience and my skills. So that was a very helpful aspect, in the sense that I wasn't going to have to, as somebody who was going to coordinate it, to learn a whole new area. So that was very helpful. It meant that we shortcutted certain aspects of the early stages of it, because I got the program very quickly. I understood the approach. It made sense to me. How long did it take? I think it was done over a relatively short period of time. And in fact, one of the things that I would say is that for setting up programs, that is a thing that I think needs to be given time, that early stage of things. We set it up, though, within 6 to 9 months of the discovery of the program at the conference. Because we had actually decided that we would actually use this program, I straight away got on to the developer of the program, a woman in the States, Brenna Bree, and got on to Skype with her. And we had a series. We used to Skype weekly, and it would be for 2 or 3 hour sessions, and we'd talk the program through, and I, in a way, grilled her about the program, asking all sorts of questions about it, to really try and explore how the thing operated from an educational point of view, how it worked, and why do you think it does work, and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of that went on initially. That was before we did anything about working with the people who are going to be the agency mentoring, doing the actual mentoring with the children. The second stage then was to identify an agency that might mentor with kids, and then there was the stage of going around schools, talking to schools, to see would schools be prepared to take this in a way to pilot it initially, because it was unknown to them, of course, that stage, and that there were schools that were very receptive, schools that we went to. So we then had a training system, training organised, where Brenna Bree came over from the States, and we ran a 2-day training of the mentors. And I was trained in that, so I was trained as a mentor as well, and others too in Archways. Archways actually, at the initial stage, Archways put forward quite a lot of people to mentor. And so we carried a lot of the mentoring at the beginning, because it was very much pilot. We carried a lot of the mentoring at the beginning, not half of it, but maybe a third of it. And then there was the agency first agency we used was the youth service. So they worked first of all with it. Didn't actually suit them, it didn't fit them. We changed then after that first cycle of it. But we trained them first of all. So they were trained, we were trained. The agencies involved in running MAP, in implementing and running MAP, are Brenna Bree in Rutgers University in New Jersey. That's where she's based. And she's been very closely involved all the time, still is. Archways, as the main agency in Ireland, implementing the setting up and dissemination of the program. Then the youth service initially, after we realized that the youth service, because of their rules of engagement, that wasn't going to work well, we switched it to an agency that is a much better fit with them, and that is the school completion programs. And so the agencies that run that do the mentoring now are the school completion programs nationwide. There's a lot of them all around the country doing it. Once we had it set up in the schools, we had to meet a very important part of it actually was meeting the staff in the schools. This program had to be described to the school staff, because every member, every teacher, and others equal as well, would be involved in the program, minimally in fact, but they all needed to know what it was about, what its aims were, what the approach was, because the approach, there's something a little different about the approach, and they needed to understand that. And understand, of course, it had an evidence base that change doesn't happen quickly, and to encourage them to be patient with this, give it the time. It's a 2-year program, give it the 2-year span. We then went to the stage of contacting the parents of the children that the schools had put forward, and talking to them, explaining to them the program, getting their permission that their child would be involved in this program, and that all went very, very well, and then we moved on from there. It all worked very smoothly, which was quite interesting, and I think that was because of the fact that we went out and spent a lot of time talking to the staff, explaining all the details of it. But the challenges were things like the agency that we chose, the youth service, were very, very skilled working with kids, obviously, and they were remarkably good mentors. But there were certain structural things that the way the youth service operates. One rule they have, a base rule they have, is they do not take children out of class time. And this is a program that takes children out of class time. So that was a problem. That really was the biggest challenge of all. That was one. Another challenge was a challenge that is inherent in the program, and it is the challenge of the communication style that the program requires. It's a particular kind of communication. It's called motivational interviewing, and it means that in practical terms, what that means is if there's a problem comes up in school, the way kids are functioning in school, problem gets identified, people in the caring profession are very quick to jump in and offer suggestions, but not at all in MAP. This program, you don't do this at all. And so one of the challenges was to stop the youth workers doing that, because it was their natural thing to do. So they had to learn to engage with children in a way that was completely different from how they actually engaged beforehand. The training came about, was done with a lot of support. There's a lot of pre-training discussion about training styles, training approach, to blend Brenna Bree's approach, the woman from the States, and my own approach, Archways, our approach in Archways. And so that was done by Skype. And then a day together, when Brenna came over from the States, she came over and ran the 2 days training. So we had a day before it. We sat down together, ran through everything in great detail. And then we had a review and evaluation of that afterwards. The training took 2 days. And then we set up a supervision, which happened every 2 weeks at that stage. It isn't as frequent now, but it was at that stage, every 2 weeks, ongoing training and supervision with the mentors. And that was very, very helpful. It sort of talked out a lot of the difficulties they were encountering in the schools themselves, and going in a very different type of role. The support has been really important, and I think it's essential for setting it up. At that early stage, there was a lot of support, huge amount of support. Some ways I could look back and say we didn't need to do so much, and some ways I say I'm glad we did do so much, because it meant that people felt that they could always ring us, so they'd be on the phone to us, talking things out, feeling they made a mess of things or whatever it might be. But it meant, though, that people felt confident being out there trying something that they weren't necessarily sure of, because they were sort of trying out quite a different skill. And what teachers are saying, what mentors are saying, what school completion program is saying, that one of the mentors did a program evaluation at the end of last year that they do, and she was saying that the outcomes were improved academic skills, improved school engagement across the broad spectrum, getting their classwork done, getting their homework done, bringing in the materials, being ready for school, all the details, the practical things that children need to learn, and some children take a long time to learn those things. Those things changed. We did evaluate the implementation. We did it on an ongoing basis within the ongoing training supervision with the mentors. And then at the end of every year, we got the schools, sent out questionnaires to the schools to ask the staff and ask the principals, how did they experience this program coming to schools? Were they prepared well for it? Did they feel confident about it, and all the rest? And so we got that from schools for the first two years at least, I think, initially, until it was set up in the schools, well set up in place in the schools. And we did it, we've done it every year then with the mentors since, always about the implementation. So we're always trying to improve that. Although now we're at a different stage with it, because we supervise them. The school completion programs run it with the schools. It's not really done through Archways in the same way now. Our role in a way is quite different at this stage of it. But the evaluation was done on a constant basis. When we took on the program, it was the first time the program had been replicated outside of the US. It had been done in the US in about 5 different states. So it was done in quite a lot of places in the States anyway, but it hadn't been done outside of the US. So we brought it over to Ireland. That was the first time it was brought over and adapted, and we had to adapt the material, change the language used, whatever. There were various things about it had to be adapted. And so we have implemented it here, and we've implemented it with school completion programs in Dublin City, County Dublin, Wexford, Longford, Monaghan, Cork. There's quite a lot of agencies up in Belfast who want to use it as well. So it looks like it's going to become, some of them are government agencies, so it's getting taken on by the government agencies up there too. Would I implement it differently? I think that the only one thing I would say initially would be, I feel that the taking on of an agency where it didn't suit at a very base level the way they operated was a mistake. And I think that it was a shame. It wasn't a disaster at all, but I think that could have been averted. I think that for people taking on the program, make sure you know what the program requires. We have written a handbook for schools, actually, and a manual. So the program is now, I wrote a manual for the program, so it's a manualized program. Consult them, because what you don't want is, if it's an agency taking on to run the program, to go in to run this program and say, okay, I can't do it like that because of A, B, and C. Because the program needs to be done the way it is set down. It is set down in a very particular way. It's a very targeted, focused program, and it really does need to be operated in the way it is described. So get to know the program very, very well. Train people well for it. Identify the core unique skills, not unique, but different skills that the program has. So the motivational interviewing approach, which boils down to talking to, listening to children in a kind of different way. It's very close to what people do, but it's fundamentally different, and that is one of the things that makes the major difference of the program, one of the things that makes the program work. So know that type of thing, know the details of the program. I think that is extremely important. Without doing that, if people try to rush into the program or take it on as a quick solution, quickly implement the rest of it won't really work. It needs good groundwork done. And staff need to be well prepared in schools. That's another very important one. The school staff that engage with the program do need to know what the program is about.